All righty, welcome. We're excited to have Megan with us here. Megan is running for the Aspen Peaks. I still got to get that changed in my mind. The Aspen Peaks School District Board. And remind us, Megan, what seat you're running for.
Seat one.
All righty, seat one there in Lehi. And we're excited to have her here. We've got 15 questions that she's going to answer at 1 minute intervals. So it's going to be kind of a bit of a rapid fire here. Are you ready to go?
You bet. Let's do it.
All right. So the first question I have is board composition and expertise. What professional backgrounds and skill sets do you believe are the most valuable for school board members to bring to effectively govern our new school district?
Great question. I think a school board member should be a really good collaborator. We're going to have 7 people coming in with a mission, with their own passions and experience. And I also think as a collaborator, we should be looking at other people, teachers, parents, like other voices to kind of come in and help out. I think we need to have board members that are open-minded for that same reason. I'm coming in with in a specific lane, but I need to be able to let my board know, I want to hear your point of view. I'm willing to change my mind if I hear new data. I think that's really important. I think we need to have board members who are strategic thinkers, that we're not just thinking about the first 1 to 3 years, but what does this mean 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What are the policies that we're doing that are going to set us up long term? And last, I'll say, I think we need to make sure we're fiscally responsible, that we're ready to look at the budget and be really careful with taxpayers' dollars.
Great. Question two, tax policy and funding. What is your position on or what was your position on the proposed tax increment increase to fund facilities and capital expenditures, and how would you evaluate future tax policy decisions?
So I attended the latest Truth in Taxation meeting here in Alpine, and it was an emotional meeting, and rightfully so, right? Taxpayers, it's hard to see your money, your taxes increase. I can also see the point of view of our schools. We need to fund our public schools. So a couple things I'd like to consider moving forward. One is the data. We need to make sure that before I commit to never raising taxes, I need to be able to see what's coming in through our income tax, and do we need to bridge that gap? Two, I want to make sure we have really clear goals so that our tax dollars, when they're spent, are all tied back to a goal or a vision from Aspen Peaks, right? So we're not just spending money. We can say we're spending this money because we're doing X, Y, or Z. And I also, one thing I want to really look at is who we hire for our business administrator. Do we have someone with this expertise, not only for the board, but to help educate our public to understand the reason for these tax increases, or if taxes stay the same?
Okay, great. Next question is transition planning. What do you see as the most critical operational gaps that need to be addressed as we separate from Alpine School District, and how should we prioritize fulfilling them?
That's a good question, and probably top of mind. I really hope that parents and our students, especially, and our teachers don't feel this transition. I think the goal is that the day it switches from Alpine to Aspen Peaks, it's business as usual. So some of the things that I would think about in that transition is transportation. Hopefully over the next 18 months, we're working with the other districts, making sure that we have buses, bus routes, bus drivers. Nice that Orem has a different population than we do. Maybe, there's ways to work together. I'm also already making relationships with board members who are running from other districts, hoping that we can collaborate as soon as we get in. And I think one of the last things is thinking about staffing, is making sure that we're able to put contracts in place, that teachers aren't worried about their jobs, and that we're looking at our superintendent and business administrator hiring, getting those in place immediately to help smooth that transition, I think is really important.
Okay. Next question is, how would you approach creating Aspen Peak's inaugural budget, and what factors should guide the financial planning process?
Budget being top of mind, I'll go back to initially saying we need to really look at who we hire as our business administrator. Having worked with the current business administrator in Alpine, I watched Truth in Taxation for another district to sort of see what their thought process was. I think that we need to make sure we're hiring the best staff to help guide through that budget process. I think we need to look at one of my priorities is teachers. And so how are we budgeting for staff members, making sure that with 3 districts that we're able to offer really competitive pay to make sure that Aspen Peaks is attracting some of the best talent. If we have great teachers in our classrooms, for me, that trickles down to the best student experience. And then we also need to be able to look at past budgets, sort of see what we've done before and how do we transition that, scale it down, so to speak, for our district, and then see if there's money left over or if some of those expenses kind of stay the same as we scale.
Okay. Next question has to do with economic development. How would you evaluate tax incentives and requests from development agencies, and what criteria should guide these discussions?
It's a really good question. I think it also, part of it goes back to, do we have 7 board members who sort of understand our budget, understand what we're doing with taxes, understand how grants work? And then also, are we working with a business administrator who comes in with an education background, a Utah background to help us guide some of those decisions? I do think we need to be looking at, we do have some capital planning issues going into this in our district. Thankfully, we're not growing quite as fast as the West, so we're able to focus on, potentially a new elementary school, potentially a rebuild at American Fork High School. So are we looking at bonds for those? What do we do with the money that we're going to get when the district splits? And so being able to look at each of those avenues to make sure that our district gets what we need.
Okay. Next question is, how would you approach establishing district policies for Aspen Peaks, adapting existing frameworks or developing new ones, and what should guide this process?
So I've read through quite a few of the current policies at Alpine School District, and I think that's probably one of the first things um, as we set up this new district that we look at what's already in place, see if it fits our needs here, and make sure we vote those policies in. I sat on a book review committee that looks at policy 6161 in place, and I was so grateful that policy clearly outlined what do we do when there's a book review. And I think there was no questions on opinion, or it was, we're going to follow the procedure, we're going to follow the policy. And so I think having that guidance from policies in place now, making that transfer, I think if we have questions about policies, I would be willing to look into like a parent committee, parent teacher committees to help say, hey, there's a couple policies we're unsure where we want to change. Let's get some other input. But policy and procedure is really important to make sure that teachers, students, parents are all treated fairly as different circumstances arise.
Okay. Next question. What approach should the school district take in establishing relationships with employee unions and negotiating collective bargaining agreements?
So the Alpine Education Association just put out their endorsements on Friday, and I'm really grateful to be the only candidate in seat 1, who they chose to endorse. For me, that tells me that teachers trust that one of my main priorities is, like I said, to make sure we're hiring the best teachers, we're giving them the professional development that they want, and making sure that we have a culture where we value what these educators are doing for our students sort of being the center of this new district. And so I think that our job is to work with our teachers union. If legislation continues to pass where we don't have that direct relationship, I want teachers to know that I'm ready to talk, whether it's with the union or teachers, like that they are a priority for me. And so again, we'll kind of have to see what happens with the referendum and the legislation there. But I think it's really important that teachers feel valued in our district.
Okay. Next question is, how should Aspen Peak School District engage with state legislators and position itself on education-related legislation?
That relationship is super important. I was able to meet with my own legislative rep, Christofferson. I also spoke with my state senator, Brady Brammer, early on in my campaign to establish some of those relationships. I think it's important that we are able to hear their point of view, but also bring to them what's actually happening here in our schools, whether that's from a teacher perspective, a parent perspective. That I had a teacher say, people who are in decision-making positions, the board, the legislature, come ask our opinion when for the people who are in the classroom or right doing the job, or a parent, right? They're at home with these students. They know what their students need. So I hope our legislature works with us to hear what's really happening here in Lehi. And there's a nice partnership, a discussion. They're going to have information that we don't have and vice versa. So those relationships are really crucial.
Okay. Next question. How would you balance educator professional autonomy with community standards regarding classroom displays and teaching materials?
So we currently, back to kind of that policy question, we already have, at least in Alpine, policies in place that give teachers and parents guidelines. We have the display policy in policy 6161 in our district. We have a legislative policy, I think it's House Bill 77, that talks about flags. I know that was an issue here in this district. As a board member, it's really important to me that I understand the policies and legislation in place and make sure that we're following them. And then under those boundaries or under those guidelines, how do we help teachers, students, parents feel safe, welcome, respected? But we need to be able to use the policies in place to make sure that we're all doing the same thing.
Okay. Next question is how should the district handle parent concerns about instructional materials and library resources while maintaining educational quality?
Another great question. I'm going to go back to policy 6161. Having sat on a book review committee, and again, there's a very clear policy in place. There were parents, a librarian, an administrator. We went through, we looked at a piece of literature, we read it, we went through the policy, and there's 4 things that can happen. You can retain it, you can replace it, you can restrict it, or you can remove it. And if one of those 4 still, if there's still a parent concern given that outcome, I think they can come back and still appeal it. I think it's important that parents feel a true partnership in what their kids have access to, their kids' education. And then I love that we have policies in place to help guide what that looks like. It is very important to me that we have age appropriate materials in our library. I think of elementary school kids, that should be a safe place for them to like discover and learn and find the books that they want in a place that is protected for them. So again, I'm grateful for policies in place, and I hope that parents really feel like there is a true partnership there.
Okay. Next question is what approach should the district take regarding health education curriculum and material selection?
Good question. And I actually get this question a lot about what does a school board actually do and what do they have control over? And so I'm really grateful that we have a Utah State Library Board. They're the ones that pick, I think, maybe a little more broad strokes of what curriculum looks like, what types of things we're going to cover. And then we have some autonomy here to pick maybe the specific curriculum we're going to use, like the books or the companies that we choose to purchase from. But I'm grateful that we have the Utah State Library Board that gives us that counsel. And then there's also legislation in place too that we have to make sure that we are following. And so as a board, I don't see, or I don't plan to have the board making decisions just on our own or going rogue. There's a hierarchy of plans that we have to follow. And I'm grateful that we'd be consistent among other school districts, grateful to have that guidance from people above a local school board level.
Okay. Next question is what role should civic education and constitutional studies play in our curriculum, and how can we best prepare students for citizenship?
Oh, this is so great. I just had my oldest graduate from high school, and you send them out into the world and you hope that they've learned some life skills, that they feel prepared to engage in our community. So I think it's important. I'm grateful that our high schools have a government class, a financial literacy class, some of those things that help inform them of the world around them. I think it's important that we do that kind of back to this curriculum question in correct format with correct type of materials. But it is really important that we help our students understand how to engage. I had students show up to our Q&A the other night. They were getting extra credit, I think, from one of their government classes. I've seen them at school board meetings that were helping these students understand and engage the process, especially at a local level, because that is where the government affects them the most here at a local level.
Okay. Next question. How would you approach decisions about graduation requirements and academic standards to best serve our students' college and career readiness?
Great question. I think this also goes back to some of our Utah State Board standards. Are we making sure we're in line with them? I've appreciated some of the discussion around school fees. That's been a legislative issue. And part of that has been, is there a graduation path that allows for students to take required classes without having to pay a fee for that class? That might be for a science lab or so not extracurricular, but it would allow students to be able to make sure they have access to their core classes that allow them to go to graduation. I think that's an interesting discussion that is new this year. And I think there's always room for parent input there. But again, some of the things we're following come from a step above us. But yeah, I think it's important that we're getting input, that we're looking at making sure our high school kids are prepared once they graduate.
Okay. Next question is how should the school district respond to state policies regarding charter schools and school choice programs that may impact our enrollment and funding?
It is a really awesome time for parents to live in Utah County and to advocate for their kids. We have private schools, charter schools, homeschool option, and public school option. And I have a parent, 3 kids still in the district, a fourth, like I said earlier, graduated. How awesome for me as a parent to decide the best place for my kid to thrive. I also love seeing the hybrid model on an A-day, B-day. A-day maybe at home, B-day you get to come be with classmates if you're at a middle school or high school level. Um, as someone who's running for a public school board, I'll always advocate and want more funding for our public school kids, right? That feels important to me. But I also love this idea. Like I said, parents are partners. Parents know their kids best. And what a great opportunity here in Utah County for them to get to choose. And maybe they choose one year, one thing, and it's not working. They've got more choices for the next year. I think it's wonderful that parents have an opportunity to pick what's best for their kids.
Okay. And the second to last question, what role should trade skills and technical education play in our district's offering, and how would you expand these opportunities?
I love this. I just had an opportunity to go to Westlake High School's Farm Day and talk to kids who are in the Future Farmers of America program and who are using some of those MTech classes that we partner with right now in Alpine. And I was talking to 2 students who were giving me a tour, and they were so excited about the opportunity to look at the diesel mechanic program and have that partially paid for or discounted rate for them to be able to get some of these certificates or skills before they graduate from high school. I think it is huge and so important that we look at each type of student, some going to a traditional college, some maybe doing a trade, some needing these certificates, that we continue that partnership with MTech, that we continue to offer concurrent enrollment classes. My son was able to take some of those and then head to UVU with already a couple credits under his belt. So awesome for students, especially at a discounted rate, for them to get that opportunity in high school and see where their interests lie before they leave sort of that bubble of a high school experience.
Okay. Final question is 1 minute to appeal to voters. So we'll let you have kind of an open forum here, whatever you'd like to say.
Hey, I just want to let people know that with 3 kids in the district, I feel an excitement and a responsibility to help build this new district. I've been involved in schools since I moved here the last 4 years, being on Belmont Elementary's executive PTA committee. I've served on 3 Lehi School community councils. I also serve on the Lehi Park Tax Committee, getting to know some of our city leaders. And I'm also on the Utah State Library Board. So I feel like I'm getting a broader perspective of what's happening across our state. I feel so grateful that the teachers union, Alpine Education Association, feels like I'm going to take care of our teachers, understanding that trickles down to our best student experience. And so I hope that voters will take the time to do some research, go to my website, and understand that I have a real vested interest in what Aspen Peaks looks like.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Megan. I know it's not easy putting your name in the hat, if you will, and going through an election cycle. So we appreciate you and what you do, and wish you the best of success in the upcoming election.
Appreciate it. Thank you.